What is Black August? What is Black August? Tell me, what is Black August? Black August is an annual commemoration, and it was originally prison-based holiday to remember Black political prisoners, Black freedom struggles in the United States and beyond, and to highlight Black resistance against racial, colonial, and imperialistic oppression. It takes place during the entire calendar month of August. So, why? What is the significance of Black August? For many reasons, as I stated, Black political prisoners, Black freedom struggles, and in the United States. For a number of reasons, August is the month to celebrate. In August, late August 1619, the first group of enslaved Africans were brought to Virginia. In August of 1833, the Slavery Abolition Act was put in place. In abolishing slavery in the majority of British colonies, resulting in more than 800,000 enslaved Africans in the Caribbean, South Africa, and Canada became free. Why? Why was this so important in the month of August? And why does August 28th mean and be something that is so significant? Let's take a look and see. August 1st, Emancipation Day. August 2nd, Chokia Lambamba was an American attorney, an activist, and a politician who was affiliated with the Black separationist organizations, the Republic of New Africa, and served as its second vice president. He later served as a human rights lawyer in Michigan and Mississippi. And he served as mayor of Jackson, Mississippi from July 1st, 2013 through February 25, 2014. August 3rd is important. Archibald J. Carey Jr., who was a Chicago minister, attorney, activist, orator, speechwriter, and political judge. He was a Republican who was elected as the alderman from Chicago's 3rd Ward and served on the Chicago City Council from 1947 to 1955. In 1952, Carey was one of the speakers at the Republican National Convention, which met in Chicago. From 1955 to 1961, he served on the President's Committee on Government Employment Policy. On August 3rd, 1957, he was appointed by President Dwight D. Eisenhower as the chair of the committee, succeeding Maxwell Apple, who had died. Carey was the first African American to hold that position as the chairman of the President's Committee on Government Employment Policy. On August 4th stands out for several reasons. August 4th, a Marxist revolutionary and Pan-African, was named president of Burkina Faso in 1983. However, on August 4th was the incarceration of Debbie Sims. She was born August 4th, 1956, and was in prison for the third-degree murder of a Philadelphia police officer in 1978. Following a 15-month-long siege on a MOVE compound in Philadelphia's Village neighborhood, police launched a major assault on their home. That was on August 8th, 1978. 9 MOVE members were arrested and convicted of third-degree murder and conspiracy in connection with the death of a Philadelphia police officer during the raid. Despite the lack of any evidence linking any of them to the shooting, they were given 30 to 100-year sentences. All 9 became eligible for parole in 2008, but each time had been repeatedly denied. However, on June 16th, 2018, Debbie Sims Africa, the Minister of the Education for the MOVE organization at the time of her incarceration, became the first of the MOVE 9 to be paroled after nearly 4 decades in prison. August 5th stands out for several reasons. On August 5th, 1962, South African anti-apartheid activist Nelson Mandela was arrested on charges of leaving the country without a passport and inciting workers to strike. It was the beginning of his 27 years of imprisonment. On the 16th of October, 1993, the Norwegian Nobel Committee reported 2 South Africans were to receive a Nobel Peace Prize for the year 1993. One of those was Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18th, 1918, and he died December 5th, 2013, at the age of 95 years. August 6th had several dates that were important. In 1861, the Congressional Confiscation Bill freed slaves who were forced to fight against the United States government or to work in support of the rebellion. The Senate passed the final bill on August 5th, 1861, by a vote 24 to 11, and it was signed into law by President Lincoln the next day. Although the bill just had symbolic importance, it had little effect upon the rebellion or wartime negotiations. In early 1862, a group of moderate senators, led by Ohio's John Sherman, produced a compromise bill that authorized the federal government to free slaves in conquered rebel territory and prohibited the return of fugitive slaves, while allowing the Confederate property through court action. It also allowed the Union to recruit African American soldiers. Although more aggressive than the first act, the second act of 1862 really lacked enforcement capabilities, and it was loosely enforced by the Lincoln administration. And the law was actively undermined by Lincoln's successor, President Andrew Johnson. President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the voting bill of 1965 on August 6. It authorized the suspension of literacy tests and the sending of federal examiners into the South. It was signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson during the height of the civil rights movement. Congress later amended the act 5 times to expand its protection. August 7th stands out. A young 17-year-old, Jonathan P. Jackson, born June 23rd, 1953. He was the 17-year-old brother of George Jackson. He entered the Marion County Hall of Justice, where Judge Haley was presiding over the trial of the San Quentin prisoner, James McClain. He brought 3 guns into the County Hall of Justice. Jonathan drew the weapons from his satchel, and with the assistance of McClain and 2 prisoners who were witnesses for McClain, they took hostages Judge Haley, Deputy District Attorney Gary Thomas, and 3 female jurors. Upon exiting the courthouse, Jackson and the other kidnappers attempted to flee with the hostages in tow. Police and prison guards opened fire on the van that Jackson was driving. At the end of the shootout, Jackson, Judge Haley, McClain, and Christmas were dead, and McGee and Thomas were seriously injured. The kidnapping was meant to be a tool to negotiate the freedom of the Soledad brothers, 3 prisoners, George Jackson, Fleta Drumgo, and John Clutchett. They had been charged with the murder of a prisoner's guard at Soledad Prison in California. The guns that Jackson used were registered to a political activist, Angela Davis. Although she was 1,000 miles away, because those guns were registered, Angela Davis, who had recently been fired from the University of California Los Angeles for inflammatory language, was charged in relation to the shootout. Upon her capture, Richard Nixon, president, congratulated the FBI for apprehending the most dangerous terrorists in the country. Davis would later be acquitted in a trial that would go down in the annals of the Black Power movement. This young brother, the man-child who was tall and graceful and bright-eyed, Jonathan Peter Jackson, died that day on August 7th, 1970. However, his brother said it was probably one of the days that he was the most free. On August 9th, 2014, Michael Brown was shot and killed by police officer Darrell Wilson in Ferguson, Missouri, a suburb of St. Louis. Wilson, who was a white male Ferguson police officer, said that that altercation occurred when Brown attacked him in his police vehicle. He grabbed for Wilson's service pistol. Although witnesses said that is not what happened, it said that Wilson initiated the confrontation by grabbing Brown by the neck through his patrol car window, threatening him and then shooting at him. At this point, both Wilson and Johnson stated that Brown and Johnson fled, with Wilson pursuing shortly thereafter. When he shot, Officer Darren Wilson shot at Michael Brown, Brown stopped, turned around with his hands raised. According to Johnson, Officer Wilson then shot Brown multiple times until Brown fell to the ground. And in this entire altercation, Officer Wilson fired a total of 12 bullets, including 2 during the struggle in the car. Brown was struck 6 times, all in the front of his body. This event ignited the unrest in Ferguson. Witnesses to the shooting claimed that Brown had his hands up in surrender and said, "Don't shoot." So protesters later used the slogan, "Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot." August 10th. August 10th was one of the most infamous incidents of the uprising occurring shortly after the main yard had been secured. The Attica Prison Rebellion of 1971 is frequently invoked and is considered to be one of the beginning of the Black August celebration. It was a key moment in the radical prison. In the book, Tip of the Spear and the Long Attica Revolt, Burton argued that Attica is Black August resistance, arguing that that event was later referred to as Attica actually began the Manhattan House of Detention known as the Tombs. It was believed that this was one of the reasons that it stands out so much is that all of the racial mistreatment is persistent in different forms, even in the present day. The incident, supposedly, a public information officer for the New York Department of Corrections falsely told the press that the inmates had cut the throats of 10 hostages who died during the assault. It was believed that the correction officers and the state troopers processing the surrender wounded the inmates. As a result of that lie, there were numerous acts of brutality against the prisoners. However, less than 24 hours later, autopsies revealed that all of the dead hostages had been killed by police gunfire. Racial tensions is the major factor in the revolt. In an inmate population which was nearly 55% African American and 10% Hispanic, while all of the guards were white. In addition to that, it was overcrowded and has increased to this day from 1,200 prisoners, for which it was designed, to 2,243 prisoners. The McKay Commission, which provided the official report on the events, commented that with the exception of the Indian massacres in the late 19th century, the state police assault, which ended the 4-day prison uprising, was the bloodiest one-day encounter between Americans since the Civil War. August 11th, the Waltz riot, sometimes referred to as the Watts Rebellion or Watts Uprising took place in Watts neighborhood from August 11th to the 16th, 1965. A total of 3,438 people were arrested. What was the reason for this? It was to end mistreatment by the police and to end discrimination in housing, employment, and school systems. Did it do that? No, not really. August 12th stands out. Hugo Pinella, born on March 10th, 1945, was killed August 12th, 2015. He was one of the San Quentin Six who were involved in the attempted prison break to liberate George Jackson in 1971. He was killed in a high security state prison in 2015. According to the San Quentin Six, before his death, his life was a living hell. The brutality inflicted on him by prison guards made every effort to try to break him. However, it failed. He endured more than 50 years of sensory deprivation. For decades, he was denied being able to touch his family or another human being, as well as attempts on his life. The treatment he endured was cruel and unusual punishment. August 14th stands out for the various Haitian Revolution began on August 14th, where the slaves systematically set fire to the various estates. The slaves launched their insurrection in the north, and they marched through, taking prisoners and killing whites. By midnight, the plantations were in flames and the revolt had begun. It continued on until August 30th, 31. The rebel slaves forces reached nearly 15,000. Slaves joined because they had deserted their plantation by will or by force or by the sure thrust and compulsion of events that were set in motion by a revolutionary corps. The slave strategy was clear. Every time the planters encircled or overcome them, they would retreat to the mountains to reorganize and prepare a new attack. The slaves burnt down the plantations methodically until all the major parishes in the upper North Plain region were hit and communications between them were severed. August 17th, Marcus Moses Garvey Jr. was a Jamaican political activist. He was also the founder and first president general of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, which he declared himself the provisional president of Africa. He founded the United Negro Improvement Association, the African Communities League, and more organization. His famous quote, "The ends you serve that are selfish will take you no farther than the yourself, but the ends you serve that are for all in common will take you into eternity." If you haven't confidence in yourself, you are twice defeated in the race of life. With confidence, you have won even before you started. August 21st, George Jackson, who was born in September 23, 1941, in Chicago, was killed on August 21st, 1971, just 2 days before the opening of his trial. George was murdered by a tower guard inside San Quentin prison. His life began. At the age of 18, Jackson was convicted on dubious evidence of a gas station robbery of $70. He said in his book, "I was captured and brought to prison when I was 18 years old because I couldn't adjust." For his alleged guilt, Jackson was sentenced to between 1 year and life in prison and was shipped off to a California's notorious San Quentin. This indeterminate sentence declared by the judge would incentivize him to have good behavior. With this type of sentence, they could hold prisoners for whatever time they felt deemed that they had been broken. Captured imprisonment is the closest to being dead that one is likely to experience in this life, Jackson later wrote in his book, The Soledad Brother. His book sold over 400,000 copies and was just one of several that he wrote. Jackson said that he served as a dynamic spokesperson for the most wretched among the oppressed, and he was in the vanguard of the most dangerous front of struggle. He knew what it meant to seek for heightened socialist and humanitarian consciousness inside the belly of the white imperialistic beast. The Soledad brothers are pivotal cases of understanding of the racist nature of the prison system in the United States. To the understanding of the state's continued escalation, it is the means of controlling prisoners who will not be broken by brutal or dehumanizing prison conditions. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois said, "It is not that we commit the most crimes, but we are most often arrested and convicted and sent to prison." August 24th, 2024, the exonerated Central Park Five, formerly the Central Park Five, were brought onto the stage of the 2024 Democrat National Convention by longtime civil rights leader Reverend Al Sharpton. These were the five young. The youngest was 13 and the oldest was 15. They were presumed to be the murder, the rape of a white woman. However, they were long exonerated by DNA. However, as he spoke in his speech, Salam, who has been elected to the New York City Council, said Trump, he wanted us dead. He wanted us unalive. Even though we have been freed, the former president refuses to recount his accusation against them, saying he dismisses the scientific evidence. He will never change. He never will. As Maya Angelou said, when people say what they are, what they'll do, who they are, believe them because that is who they are.
A total of 41 years in prison. Reverend Al Sharpton stood with us. Now, I'm proud to stand with him today. Vice President Kamala Harris has also worked to make things fairer. I know she will do the same as president. Now prove that message.
I love these guys. These are my brothers. These are my brothers. Yes, indeed. America. I am Yusuf Salam. A New York City councilman representing my hometown of Harlem. Representing my hometown of Harlem, USA. And listen, as my friend Corey Wise just said, 45 wanted us unalive. He wanted us dead. Today, we are exonerated because the actual perpetrator confessed and DNA proved it. That guy says he still stands by the original guilty verdict. He dismisses the scientific evidence rather than admit he was wrong. He has never changed, and he never will. That man thinks that hate is the animating force in America. It is not. We have the constitutional right to vote. In fact, it is a human right. So let us use it. I want you to walk with us. I want you to march with us. I want you to vote with us. And together, and let me tell you, this is going to be so beautiful. And together, on November 5th, we will usher in Kamala Harris and Tim Walz into the White House. So I want to do this. When I say one day, I want you to say, see us. One day, one day, when they see us, America will finally say goodbye to that hateful man. We will say what I have said after 7 long years of wrongful incarceration. Free at last. Free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Black August. Black August, August 28th, is really significant, for there were three main events that took place on August 28th. August 28th, grown adult white men kidnapped and murdered Emmett Till. It was considered to be maybe the first catalyst for the civil rights movement. He was a 14-year-old Black teenager from Chicago visiting his family in a small town in Mississippi during the summer of 1955. He was lynched just for allegedly whistling at a white woman. The Emmett Till murder trial brought to light the brutality of Jim Crow segregation in the South, which began the civil rights movement. In 2017, Tim Tyson, author of the book, The Blood of Emmett Till, revealed that Carolyn Bryant, who was the white woman who was supposedly whistled at, recanted her testimony. She admitted Till had never touched her. He never threatened her or harassed her. Nothing that boy did could ever justify what happened to him. However, in 2022, a grand jury in Mississippi declined to indict Bryant for her role in the crime nearly 70 years earlier. She died the following year in 2023. In March of 2022, President Joe Biden signed the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act into law, making lynching a federal hate crime. Emmett Till's mother, Mamie Till, had an open casket. She said, "No, you can't close the casket. I want the world to see what they did to my baby, where they had beat him. He cried supposedly while they made him take off his clothes, and he was beaten, brutalized, eye was punched out, and then he was thrown into the river." The significance of the August 28th, because the same date, 8 years apart from Emmett Till's murder, is the I Have a Dream speech by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later,
the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. That one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream. That one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. One day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all shall see it together. This is the thing that I go back to the South with this faith. We will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. The day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, my country tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom reign. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom reign. From the heightening Alleghanies of Pennsylvania, let freedom reign. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom reign. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom reign from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom reign from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom reign from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. From every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city. We will be able to speak Protestants and Catholics will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty.
I have the pleasure to
August 28th, Senator Barack Obama from Illinois gave his acceptance speech at Invesco Field in what the party called an open convention. Denver last hosted the Democratic National Convention in 1908. Obama became the Democratic Party's first non-white nominee and nominee of African descent for president. He officially received the nomination for president on August 27th, when his former opponent, U.S. Senator Hillary Clinton of New York, interrupted the official roll call to move that Obama be selected by acclamation. Obama accepted his nomination the following night, August 28th. In a speech at Invesco Field before a record-setting crowd of 84,000 people in attendance. August 30th, Fred Hampton was born on August 30th, 1948. He was gifted in academics and athletics. He studied pre-law at Triton Junior College. He was inspired to study law so that it could be used as a defense against the police and their brutality. While in school, he became active in the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. He led their youth council of the organization's West Suburban branch. He increased the council membership to over 500 members. Hampton was organizing youth on behalf of the NAACP when he noticed the Black Panther Party was gaining national popularity. The party's program that integrated Black self-determinations and other elements motivated Hampton to join and relocate to Chicago. It was very clear his leadership abilities. He broke the non-aggression pact between Chicago's most powerful and dangerous street gangs. It was his personal charisma combined with organizing skills and a gift of speech, which allowed him to be noticed and quickly rise within the Black Panther organization. He organized rallies, worked with the People's Clinic free breakfast program. However, it was the success that he had with the Black Panther Party that captured the attention of the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. During those early morning hours on December 4th, 1969, the Chicago police raided Hampton's Monroe Street apartment. They were able to do this from the information they had gathered from an FBI informant, William O'Neill. The local officials stormed the apartment and opened fire. The fellow Panther, Mark Clark, was also killed. The remaining 7 Panthers who were present in the apartment were arrested and indicted by a grand jury on charges of attempted murder, violence, and a variety of weapon charges. However, these charges were eventually dropped after a Department of Justice, the DOJ, investigated and discovered the Chicago police fired 99 shots, while the Panthers only shot twice. His girlfriend, who was 8.5 months pregnant, was pulled from the bed. She was lying next to him as he lay sleeping. Many have said, why would he be caught sleeping? Because he had been drugged by the informant. He was drugged by barbiturates and was unaware of the police officers moving into his bedroom. Police officers removed the 8.5 months pregnant woman and told her, as they put the gun to her stomach, "If you don't move and get out of this way, I'll kill you." She said it was discovered that the informant who had drugged Hampton that night had told them that's where he would be. He would be asleep. According to Hampton's girlfriend/wife, he was shot towards the front of the bed. And an officer said, "Well, he's probably going to make it," which was followed by one gunshot to the head to make sure he wouldn't make it. The rating was so significant as the Justice Department that it was considered to be cruelty. The FBI headquarters filed an investigation into the raid of the Black Panthers. It is available at the FBI Records Vault. Hampton said, "You can jail a revolutionary, but you can't jail the revolution." What was so pathetically of what the FBI, Hoover, thought of this, a letter was sent to Mr. Roy Martin Mitchell, who was the Federal Bureau of Investigation in Chicago, Illinois. Mr. Mitchell, and this was so hard to read, "I am certainly pleased to commend you and here to advise that I have approved an incentive award for you in the amount of $200 for your outstanding services in the matter of considerable interest to the FBI in the racial field. Enclosed is a check representing this award. It was through your aggressiveness and skill in handling a valuable source I want you to know of my appreciation for your exemplary efforts. Sincerely, J. Edgar Hoover." Not only was that not sufficient, you will note that 5 signatures from the local police in Chicago signed off, and it was said that they gloated to think that a human being's life was only worth $200. Black August.